Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Let's go ahead and get started then. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sir Partu. Joining me today is Steve Baxey, and again the most delicious Geeky Gentleman, Ruben Board, aka the Comics Kid 2099. Hi gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello indeed. So Ruben picked our review topic for today, and Ruben, what are we reviewing?
We are reviewing the 1990 comedy somewhat action-y film Quick Change, starring Bill Murray, Geena Davis, and Randy Quaid.
Indeed. So, quick round. Before seeing this movie, had either of you heard of this before? Because I sure as hell didn't.
I had no clue.
I had seen it a few times before today, yeah.
Okay. Alright, that's interesting because this is like right up there with a lot of the Bill Murray classics. Like, we did a review of Scrooged recently for holiday month back in December, and like this is honestly I think better than that. As just far as like a really funny laugh my ass off Bill Murray movie, at least for me. I don't know what do you guys think?
Yeah, I like it. Of course, I mean, yeah, I picked it. What do you think, Steve?
I really like it. I thought it was so much fun. I will say, I think the whole movie's great. I think the first 20 minutes of the bank robbery are by far the funniest parts of the movie.
Did you guys like going into it? Because I watched the trailer on the DVD after I watched the movie, and it just like very blatantly says like these are our three bank robbers. But if you watch the movie in no context at all, I don't know, like, I'm trying to put myself in a mindset where, like, I would watch this movie without having any knowledge of it at all, because it's trying to hide the fact that Geena Davis and Randy Quaid are in on it. But, like, when you're watching the movie, their names are right there in the credits with Bill Murray. So I'm wondering if anyone who hasn't seen the trailer and doesn't see the DVD cover or anything like that, if they would be caught by surprise, like, oh, like, these two hostages are actually in on it also. Like, I guess
I was surprised by it. It felt like a legitimate twist just because I had no context for this movie at all.
Yeah,
okay.
And I didn't know, like, I don't recognize Geena Davis and Randy Quaid in their first, like, scenes when they're in you know, quote-unquote costume as hostages. I didn't realize that was Geena Davis. I didn't realize it was Randy Quaid under the beard and stuff. Like, he maybe looked kind of sort of familiar, but no, I didn't realize, oh, that's Uncle whatever his name is from National Lampoon, until after the makeup and stuff comes off. And, you know, Bill Murray's the only one I recognize as a clown, and, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's him from the very beginning. But, man, that reveal, like, you guys seen the movie Inside Man, right?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
That's a Clive Owen Spike Lee movie, and it's about a bank robbery too. And I won't spoil it, but like that whole hostage reveal moment was like right up there with Inside Man as far as like, you know, suspense movies, stuff like that. So I was pretty impressed by his plan, just in general. I think it's the most ridiculous thing because literally in no other hostage movie do you see them grant the kidnappers' demands like that. So I thought that was really funny the way that worked out.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, it's hard to talk about comedies because the gut reaction is just to go, this moment was so funny, this moment was so funny. And I don't like to do that as much because I feel that you kind of undercut other people's ability to enjoy it. So we got to think of somewhere else to go with this. Steve, you got anything in mind?
So for me, knowing Bill Murray comedies and knowing what Bill Murray's done lately, I am surprised at how kind of campy and optimistic this movie is. Because at the very beginning, when he's robbing the bank, and you have that subway scene, which is a really quirky but also kind of sadly pathetic opening. And then when he's going to the security guard, and the guard's like, "What kind of clown are you?" And he says, "The crying on the inside kind." That's by far my favorite line in the movie too. That's just great. I was expecting this movie to be like kind of heavy, almost like an Odd Couple type situation, and it wasn't at all.
Mm-hmm.
No, it is really lighthearted and just ludicrous, I think is the right word for it. And
yeah.
It does a thing in comedy that I really like, where it's just literally everything that can go wrong does.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing works out for them the way that they want it to, and so then they have to dig a deeper hole for themselves and get into a new problem and find a way out of that problem before they can find a way out of their other problem. Just left and right. Like, of course, okay, they get a cab. The movie, by all rights of real-world logic, the movie should end the second they get into that cab. But of course they got a cab driver who doesn't speak English and is freaking the Randy Quaid's character out. So it's just like every single conceivable thing that could happen. They get to a bus, but the bus driver's a real stickler and won't just accept 100. It has to be an exact... Just all that stuff. Just everything goes wrong. And that is just a style of humor in films that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, it's and that's like the last 2/3 of the movie. And I know, Steve, you said that the first roughly 20 minutes are the funniest, and I really like I think that the first act is really suspenseful in a way that a lot of the movie doesn't match up to. And I think it depends on what you're in the mood for. If you're in the mood for kind of something suspenseful with a lot of comedy, the first 20 minutes are going to really grab you. But then there are moments throughout the rest of the movie, like whenever there's that whole scene where it's like a little block radius where there's the grocery store, there's the mob hideout, and then there's the bus stop. And like where they're trying to get on the bus, that whole scene, like I was on the edge of my seat throughout that whole scene. Mm-hmm. And so that's pretty suspenseful too. But pretty much as soon as they get away and like they accidentally Randy Quaid accidentally honks the horn, like from that point forward, it's a lot more comedy and a lot less high stakes. So I think there's different ways you can take this movie, and then if you like both, then you're in for a lot of luck. But yeah, I think that pretty much it's the last hour and change of the movie is like what you were saying, where just everything goes wrong. Like Gina Davis sums it up perfectly, where they're walking to the airport and down this dark alley, and a plane flies overhead, and Randy Quaid says, "Is that our plane?" She says, "No, if it was our plane, it would be crashing." Like, and you're thinking like, oh, well, maybe she's exaggerating. No, really not. Like, everything goes wrong for these guys in just a span of a day, and you really understand why Bill Murray wants to get out of this town. Like, and that was something I enjoyed. I'm not from New York. I've never actually been to New York, but it seems to me that most movies and TV shows that are set there like to praise New York as being the best place in the world. Most of the time it seems that way to me. And so I like that this movie is saying, no, it sucks, and Bill Murray wants to get out. Like, he's willing to steal from a bank just to get out of town. Like, he hates it that much. I love that.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting thing, and you kind of just get the sense of why, because literally everyone in this town is awful. Like, Randy Quaid runs into a stop sign, or runs into a news kiosk, and is like on the ground unconscious, and what does everyone do? Just stand there and look at him.
And when he gets up, they're all like, "Oh, come on!" Like they're disappointed he's not dead.
Well, it reminds me of this joke from Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, the cartoon show, which is not very good, but does every so often do something hilarious. And it was one of the episodes where like Spider-Man's swinging, and he's talking about how much he loves New York and he loves the people there. And then he runs out of web fluid like 30 stories up, and he just falls all the way down right into the middle of the sidewalk in the middle of this busy-ass crowd. And it's just, you see it just happen from a distance. You just hear a guy yell, "Hey, I'm walking here!" And that is like the perfect New York attitude, because like you listen to people that live in New York that are like proper New Yorkers, and they just tell you what a shithole it is and how awful everyone is, and no one gives a shit about anybody. And like as a Midwesterner, I could not. I probably would have like a really hard time dealing with that, because like, man, I've been in the grocery store and I've bumped into someone and it was totally my fault, and the dude said sorry to me, and like, you know, that's just the attitude of sincerity around this part of the world. We're awful to each other on a bigotry level, but just as far as interacting person to person, you never know it. We're all so nice. But like the way New Yorkers describe New York is always really funny. The other thing it reminds me of is an episode of 30 Rock where Liz Lemon is giving like this whole moment as she's walked on the street talking about how great New York is. And she, like, opens her mouth to take a... Like, she's like, oh, even the air smells great. She opens her mouth to take, like, a big breath in. Like, just a random guy walking by on the street spits right in her mouth. And it's disgusting. And so, like, it is fun, though, to see people, like, you know, shit on New York every so often. Because you're right, Ruben. They do. It does get praised quite a bit.
I had forgotten about 30 Rock. It's been a while since I've seen it. That show gives as good as it gets. Like, I thought you were going to talk about, there's an episode where this girl gets off the bus and she says, like, she's got this attitude, like, I just came from the small town and I've come to the big city to, like, become a movie star, and, like, I'm going to live my life and make my dreams come true. That's kind of what they're making you think. And Liz is standing right there, and then she says, like, I'm going to be a prostitute and make my dreams come true. And, like, that's her dream. And then Liz is like, oh, okay. Like, I thought you were going to say that, because, like, that was another one where it's, like, makes you think it's going to go the typical, like, New York is awesome and, like, little person coming to the big city to try and make life work. And then it's like, no, it's going to go in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really funny. It's that like, it's our town, we're allowed to make fun of it atmosphere. Because Bill Murray has lived in New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So, like, it's that ability to make fun of it. Like, I can make fun of Fort Wayne with my friends, and like, there are things I can talk about in Fort Wayne that if I describe them to you guys, it'd take a lot of explaining, but it would eventually kind of be funny. Like, I can do like a 20-minute rant about medians in Fort Wayne. Mm-hmm. What is that background noise? Is someone farting into their microphone? Anyway, I could do like a 20-minute rant about medians in Fort Wayne and how shitty our city planning is. But, like, then I have to describe to you just the sheer number of medians in Fort Wayne for you to really understand that. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, everyone has a picture of New York in their head, so, like, the whole our town vibe that this movie gives off is pretty funny.
And you compare this to, like, the first Ghostbusters movie, where that movie, it really seems like they are going for a, like, yeah, we're, like, New York is awesome, and, like, all the New Yorkers pull together, and, like, they're all rooting for the Ghostbusters at the end of the movie, and, like, they hail these guys as, like, their local heroes, and we love them. And it's a very different New York portrayed there than it is here, and I can only imagine that's because Ghostbusters was more Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis's baby, and Bill Murray was there, but it wasn't really, he didn't have as much input, I guess. Whereas here, this was actually co-directed by Bill Murray. So, and he was uncredited as a writer also. So I imagine this is his vision of New York.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be right. And then there's just so much random weird shit in this movie that, like, I totally buy for New York. Like, that whole scene with the jousting on bicycles, I laughed my fucking ass off. And then it just, yeah, I could totally just see that happening on a street in New York, you know? I guess the other thing it reminds me of is, like, an episode of Seinfeld where Jerry and Kramer get roped into cockfighting, and they get the rooster, little Jerry, and he's like, you know, we got him to run from here to Winston's apartment in under a minute. And George's like, is that good? You know, I have no idea. Like, it just sounds like that's kind of the atmosphere. There's so much weird shit that you can get into because of how big New York is. It's like this little microcosm of the world. But let's transfer over and talk about the suspense elements, because There's a lot of moments in this where it is like, yeah, it is pretty intense. The bank robbery scene is pretty intense. The scene on the corner that you were talking about is pretty intense. The goddamn airplane is terrifying. It is ridiculous how terrifying that airplane is.
And it keeps you going for several minutes because the inspector Rosslinger, he goes over and talks to the mob guy in the car, and we don't hear what he says, and he's like, "Come on, we got to go to the airport." And we know that our main characters are going to the airport, but we don't know what Rosslinger just heard, so we think that he's after the guys that he's been chasing the whole movie, and so it draws it out. It's like pretty much all of Act 3. Like, I think, or most of Act 3, where he's on his way to the airport. So there's a good bit there where, and then like there's different levels of suspense because there's I guess we're spoiling it. There's a pregnancy storyline here with Gina Davis and Bill Murray, and so like when we're not following Rosslinger, like he's going to the airport and we don't know why, and then he's talking to the air marshal guy and he says, "I need to do this," and like we still think he's after our protagonist, and then we transfer over to Bill Murray and Gina Davis arguing she wants to leave. She doesn't think that he's, going to be ready for home life and stuff. So it keeps like juggling these two plot lines kind of, and it keeps the suspense going for much longer than you would think would be humanly possible for that whole chunk of the movie.
Oh, it's crazy. Like, and then there's all the near miss stuff that you gotta love. Like right when they get on the bus is when the inspector pulls up, or the chief of police rather pulls up, and then as the chief of police is talking to airport security is when you see them go by on the luggage train, and it's just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. If like they just looked over just right now, they'd see each other, and it's just craziness. So yeah, the suspense is great. Steve, did you have anything to say about that?
Not particularly, no. I mean, you kind of covered most of it, of just how clever it is in not telling you certain bits of information, and given how short this movie is, it kind of makes perfect sense that everything runs into each other as much as it does, and that adds to the suspense. And then there's just that classic Bill Murray kind of dry irony at the end of like, "I wish there were more people like you," and he's like, "No, you don't."
I really like the parallels between the chief of police and Bill Murray, how both of them hate this city so much. And like at one point, the chief of police is saying, "Oh, great, we're losing another," I don't know if it was another building or another restaurant. He's like, "We're losing another one." And he says, "When are they going to stop destroying the city?" Then immediately cuts to Bill Murray saying pretty much the exact same thing across town. Like he says, "Look at what they're doing to this city." And they're so similar, but at the same time, like so different. Like it's kind of what you want to see in a superhero movie, where your superhero and supervillain have just enough in common where they're a perfect match for each other, but at the same time, they're just different enough that they are enemies. And I really like that here, but they play it for laughs.
No, it's great, and also what I really like is the way that this is cut together. The way we keep going back to the chief of police always being just that one step behind, and we watch him figure it out, and every time like he gets a step behind, every time he figures something out, he's actually getting a little bit closer because Murray's just spinning his wheels, and he and his gang can't get out of town, which is it's just great. It's that perfect level of comedy where the world is conspiring against him, like he's doing everything right and still can't succeed, and I don't know, it's really fun to see how that's all working.
There's a fun microcosm of that whole thing when he's trying to get exact change for the bus. And I mean, there are tons and tons of movies that use that gag of just like waiting for one person to do their job super slowly, but for some reason it worked especially well here because the momentum of the police coming in, and then the mobsters coming in, and then waiting on the bus and actually having a timer going. The kind of conglomeration of events is so perfectly timed.
Yeah, God, when the mobster sees him and he just gets on the bus in time, and he's putting the change in the thing, he goes, "Oh, you can close the door, he can wait for another bus." Like, it's just, that is a really, really intense scene. It's really clever to see how it all comes together like that.
And that bus driver just cares at all, 0%. Like, he knows that these guys are involved in something, and like the mob guy is like trying to strangle Bill Murray. Bill Murray gets on the bus. He's like, "Let's go, go, go!" And the bus driver does not care at all. I love that so much.
Behind the white line.
Yeah. My parents and I will quote that all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've said the word "bluff to me," talking about a bus. So like Tony Shalhoub is in this, and this was like before he was like kind of a well-known actor, and I know him from the TV show Monk, but I'm sure he was in a lot of stuff before Monk. But also, I did not know that until today, but I knew that Tony Shalhoub was in this, but also Stanley Tucci, I think that's how you say his name. He was one of the mobsters. He was the one. He was the one who said, "This ain't my dick in your back."
Oh.
Oh shit! That was Stanley Tucci. That's awesome.
Yeah, I did not know that until today. I was because Bill Murray was talking about this movie in a somewhat recent interview. Like, it could have been 6 years ago, but it was like much more later than the movie came out. And he said something like how great the cast was, and then he mentions Tony Shalhoub and Stanley Tucci. And I was thinking, like, wait, who was that? And I had to Google it to figure out who he was. But yeah, they're like, it's amazing that. And I don't even know. I feel like Stanley Tucci was not doing that much stuff in 1990, so this was probably a very early role for him.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because Tony Shalhoub eventually went on to do Wings, which I think was like mid-90s or something.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and in that he played a cab driver, if I'm not mistaken. So it's interesting, the weird connections you can draw from watching kind of these. I don't even want to call this an older movie. This came out the year I was born, and I don't know. I'm not old, right, guys? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird thing to get to see those connections and see, these people who you associate with like this one role go on to do, or what they were doing, back in the day or whatever. Like, I don't think of Tony Shalhoub as a comedic actor. But before Monk, he almost only did comedy. And yet, Monk is more... Like, it's got comedic moments, but it's more or less a dramatic show.
Yeah.
So it's weird to watch stuff like that.
It is kind of fun to discover how much of like a hidden gem this movie seems to be, since neither one of us had seen it before. I'm really surprised this was not bigger for Bill Murray, and I was looking a little bit into it. Apparently, people did not like it when it came out.
Really?
Yeah, apparently it didn't do well on the box office. The production was kind of a nightmare, and most of the reviews were mediocre at best.
I know Ron Howard was asked to direct it, and he said he wouldn't do it because he didn't think that you could root for any of the characters. So, like, that's like all I heard about, like, resistance to the movie, and that's before it came out. But, like, I am wondering if that was, like, a complaint a lot of people had. Like, because I think it's like an underrated classic, if we can even go that far.
I mean, it's definitely one of Bill Murray's better movies, I feel. I don't know, something about this just really works for me. The idea that you can't root for the characters, I mean, they're criminals, but they're not awful people,
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a subgenre of movies that you can go in that, like Ocean's 11. I mean, I haven't seen that one in a long time, but it's like they're criminals, but they're not the worst characters in the movie. I'm sure I can't think of others where it's like they're bad, but like I don't know if you guys ever saw the Chris Evans movie Push, but it's like a heist movie with superpowers, and it's like, yeah, they're low lives, but the people they're going up against are much worse. So it's like there's precedent for those kinds of movies. So I'm curious what Ron Howard's reason for thinking that was, because like they do steal from the bank, but then they also like they won't shut up about how this town is like full of horrible people, and then the climax of the movie, Bill Murray decides to help the guy who's been chasing him throughout the whole movie. So like there's a lot of good in him too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's just because culturally in the 90s or in the very, very late 80s when they would probably have been making this movie that we just weren't doing a lot of stuff like this?
I was thinking about that as Ruben was talking, and I'm trying to remember when Seinfeld started. Since that was like the first
93, I think.
Yeah, that was like the thing that popularized kind of like awful people. Like,
yeah.
Elaine, Jerry, Kramer, and George were all kind of differing levels of assholes. They were all like selfish people, and they didn't really do good for anybody but themselves. They weren't like awful people, but they were kind of assholes, right? And that kind of I love the finale to Seinfeld. Actually, I think that they finally get some comeuppance for just how awful they've been throughout the entire series was great. But apparently, I'm the only one who thinks that.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, okay, cool. No, but like that kind of the idea of the anti-hero or the like kind of bad guy that just has things working out for him. That just is a thing now. Like we've taken it from comedic stuff and gone all the way to drama with it. Like, what is it? Breaking Bad. What's another one? That's Dexter. Where like the people who are doing like really horrible things, you're on your edge of your seat, and on some level you're rooting for them, and at other times you're hoping that they get caught.
And it all comes down to you have to have somebody worse, right? Like in this movie, I don't think it would have worked if they didn't help bring down the New York mob at the end of the movie. If it was just... I
don't know, like that twist felt so ridiculous that it just worked with the tone. I would have been fine if they got caught or if they found another way to worm their way out of it. I did not expect the fucking, what was it? Mrs. Russ Kramer's. No one treats Mrs. Russ Kramer this way. Or no, Russ Crane. Russ Crane.
Speaking of character actors before they were really big, Kurtwood Smith. I don't know. He was doing stuff before that '70s show, but when did that '70s show start? Was it like
that was late '90s? He was in RoboCop before this, though.
And he was in one of the original series Star Trek movies. He was
he was in 6.
Okay, so like, and that might have even been after this, but this was like. And this is that kind of character that I associate Kurtwood Smith with, like the hard-boiled whatever. That was what he perfected. Like he just nailed that character in that '70s show. And then like he was in Beware the Batman. He was Commissioner Gordon. And so like I have a hard time picturing him as being a softer kind of character, and he just brings it here in the span of like 10 minutes. He's not in the movie that much, but he is perfect in that role.
No one treats Russ Crane this way. No one treats Mrs. Russ Crane this way. It's just like, this guy's an asshole. Just instantly you hate him.
And
2 lines.
Did you notice so like after they walk out of the mob hideout there, and then she says, I never thought I would walk into his place, and he says, his place? You've walked into his places many times, and he's like talking about what all Lombino owns. And then when they're on the luggage cart thing going to the airplane, they pass a building that says Lombino Realtor or something like that. Like it's one of his buildings. That's the first time I noticed it was today, and I was like, oh look! And I was just like, because I guess on some level you're thinking like they paid a lot of attention to this subplot with the mob. They've got to do something with it. But I'm not sure if like you guys were thinking we were definitely going to see Lombino when they were mentioning him in the mob scene earlier.
I was not prepared for it. Steve, were you?
No, I was not expecting it. I mean, it's kind of weird the way you're talking about it. It's like this movie sets itself up really perfectly, and I have to go back and watch it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really shocked by that. I didn't notice the sign like you mentioned, Ruben. That's really, that's a really good joke that I kind of like, though, that kind of stuff where you really set something up for a long time. Because, the typical way jokes work, right, is set up, misdirection, punchline. So this does a lot of setup. I mean, they mentioned Lombino, what would you say, at the middle of the second act? And then he doesn't pay off until the climax of the movie. And that's really, really good stuff. Like, when the officer is walking up the plane and Bill Murray's like, ah, shit, it's over. And then Lambino gets up and is like, holy shit, I did not see that coming at all. That was a shock, man. That was a really, really great punchline. I instantly started laughing.
Well, speaking of punchlines, and not to just like spell out every joke in the movie, but like in the first 10 minutes of the movie when he's on the phone with Russlinger and he says, call me Chip. No, wait, call me Skip. And then at the end of the movie, the very like last 3 minutes of the movie, he says, what's your name? I want to give you a commendation. And he says, Chipowski. It's spelled S-K-I-P. And so he spells it Skipowski, but says his name is Chipowski. So it's like, that's calling back to like one of his first lines of dialogue in the movie. And I thought that was a great payoff to that.
I agree. It's really, really well done comedy. I'm trying to remember who it was. Someone was talking about Charlie Chaplin trying to make the first feature-length comedy, and they go, the idea of making a half-hour comedy where it's nothing but laughs is pretty doable, but once you go over that, you're going to have a real hard time keeping an audience. And it has a dramatic background with the whole relationship and pregnancy thing, but even that is played for comedy at points, I think.
It is. I mean, I think it absolutely is. It's the kind of every layer of drama just kind of intensifies the comedy because even more stuff is going wrong. Like, it's just kind of funny that oh, now she's pregnant and this is terrible, and on top of everything else, this is another thing he has to deal with.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, he has to rebuild his relationship in the middle of the whole thing. And I love that his friend's like, you should have told her that you love her. Oh, now you tell me.
And that's a very beautiful, simple joke, but it's like Randy Quaid is played as like the dumbest of the three, and Bill Murray is played as like this, supervillain genius. And then Randy Quaid has to tell him, well, you could have just said that. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. I could have. Like, it's like, why didn't they think of that? Do you guys buy Bill Murray and Gina Davis as a couple? Because that's something I usually focus pretty hard on that, like in any movie. Like, was their chemistry good? Like, did it work well? And I thought it worked well.
Steve, you want to take this one?
I liked them. When we got the twist of that they were together the whole time, I was expecting the movie to lose me a little bit because I was most invested in the bank robbery stuff, and then I thought interacting with, or just having him be part of a relationship, or having either of them be part of a relationship would have been generic. But I don't know. I think her kind of manic personality and Bill Murray's like really broody comedy just made it work. Particularly because they had basically a man-child with them the whole time. And that just kind of made it seem necessary that the two of them have to be together because they're watching over this man-child.
Even when she's threatening to leave him, they're both still loyal to Loomis, Randy Quaid's character, and like I love that where like they're both bickering at each other, but then she's like, "Hey, will you promise not to hit him again?" And like even though she's planning on leaving these two, she's still like protective over him. I really like that.
Don't hit me again. I haven't hit anyone today. Yeah, but the last time you hit me was not...
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. I haven't hit anyone today. I haven't hit anyone since I was 9.
Oh,
yeah, but you hit me. Like, God, how long are you gonna hold on to that?
That was so good.
Okay, let's do this one. What is your favorite joke in the movie? Because mine's actually a Gina Davis line. It's so quick, but God, it cracked me and Haley up while we were watching this. It's when they're trying to get a cab, and he's like, $1,000, and she goes, and a blowjob. And I just lost it. That was so funny. She's just like, they both look at her after she says it too, which really got me laughing.
Well, what about yours, Steve? Because it's hard for me to think of one.
Mine's still the opening one where he's like, what kind of clown are you? And he says, the crying on the inside kind.
That was great. I don't know if it's my favorite, but one we haven't talked about yet, when he says, hey, this guy may know where the Queensboro, whatever it was, the road they're looking for. He said, this guy may know. And they're like, hey, can you help us? He's like, sure. And then, like, he says, wait a minute, this guy's too nice. And they said, well, maybe he's from out of town. And he looks, and it's like, oh, yeah, he has Iowa license plates. So, like, he's asking for directions, and the guy is, like, super nice. And he says, is everyone from Iowa this nice? And the guy says, what? Oh, no, this is a stolen car. and then he holds them at gunpoint and steals $4 from them, and then, like, their luggage, and then just, like, leaves them with the map. And, like, I think it's great that this guy was actually helping them find whatever road they were looking for, and then robs them. And I don't know, that actor, I don't know if you guys have watched, well, Steve, I know you've watched Arrow, but that guy was Oliver Queen's dad in Arrow.
Yeah.
That's how he got his millions.
Yeah.
He stole from everybody, $4 at a time.
Yep. He was also in, I don't know if you guys have seen The Stand. It's like a 5-hour miniseries based on
the Stephen King thing? Yeah.
Yeah, and he is Randall Flagg, he's the devil guy in that movie. He's a really good actor, and I don't know if this was like one of his earliest roles, because this would have been just like a few years before The Stand, I think.
Interesting. It was just kind of funny to see a lot of different actors popping up here. You know, you just like, oh, I recognize that guy. Oh, I recognize that guy. All right, what else can we talk about with this one?
Do you guys think that this could have been played more like do you think they could have made a better movie or made a different movie if they like did it less comical, or maybe like did it less dramatic?
Less dramatic or wait, like, are you saying less comical or like make it an absolute farce, or make it like a serious film?
Right, yeah. Go one direction or the other. Do you think it would have been, like, more popular? Because you guys were saying, like, it wasn't very popular at the time, and I'm wondering if it would have been more so if they kind of didn't split the difference.
I imagine if you want the dramatic version of this, I'd say watch Inside Man, because that deals with a very similar situation, you know, just robbing a bank and trying to get away with it in the middle of, like, a hostage crisis and all that stuff.
Have you guys seen Dog Day Afternoon?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, it's a similar movie too. It's got Al Pacino, I think, is the main guy. It's like I was going to ask you, Steve, if you had seen it, because it's like the entire movie is a bank robbery, and so like I was thinking that whenever you said if you want the serious version, but like I was wondering. Because if people didn't, and I like this movie, so I wouldn't want them to change, like go in one direction or the other. I think it does a pretty good job of balancing the dramatic stuff and it's got good character stuff with most of our characters, and it's got good tense moments, but it's also funny. I think it does a really good job of balancing all of that. So I wouldn't want them to change that, but I was wondering if it would have worked if they, same characters, but just like, let's make it much funnier, or let's make it more serious. But I agree with you. I think there's, at least serious movies that kind of go in this direction without the comedy.
And I mean, this is 1990. I feel like Bill Murray not only has an identity, but people know what to expect when Bill Murray makes any kind of movie. And this felt, like Ian said early on, like a classic Bill Murray movie in the same way as everything else we talk about. So it's weird that people didn't like it when it came out. According to one of the reviews I read, the issue was like, since it's co-directed by Bill Murray, people thought like there was a weird tonal inconsistency between certain shots versus others, and I didn't see that at all.
That is so subtle then, because like, how many people actually pick up on cinematography?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Honestly, just watching this and trying to think of stuff to say for the review, I didn't see anything that made me jump out in Justice League fashion. Oh, clearly this was shot by a different director.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's not even like that level. Like, I mean, this is pretty much just straight shot, right? Like, Kevin Smith is, I think, a good example of this. You can write and not necessarily know how to shoot a movie, but still shoot a damn movie. Like, you're not going to necessarily have creative camera work and interesting angles and all that stuff, but if you write a good movie, you can still make a good movie. Like, Clerks is a pretty basic shot movie. There are a couple tracking, there are a couple interesting movements here and there, but nothing special. It's mainly just, okay, here's the camera and the guys are in frame, and that's all you need. I feel like this is that same thing. Like, you get some cool moments here and there. Like, I like the lady selling the flowers and how ominous her shadow looks and stuff like that. Just, she's got a real market on that corner. Like, that's a pretty good one. And there's a couple other visual gags, like when they say, oh, if we could just find a landmark, and then the camera pans up and you can see the Statue of Liberty. There's stuff like that, but otherwise the visual for this is mainly just, economical. They're showing what you need to see kind of stuff.
Yeah.
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 So I could imagine the tone and direction and cinematography being a big tip-off to people.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a purposeful movie, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember off the top of my head who the co-director was, but, like, it's not a name that jumped...
Howard Franklin.
Has he done anything you guys are, like, familiar with off the top of your head?
Name of the Rose.
Okay.
Nope, don't think I've ever heard of... I don't even think I've heard of this guy.
I haven't either, and so I was just thinking, like, unless you're, like, Roger Ebert, like, somebody who's, like, very familiar with, like, every movie ever made, like, you wouldn't be like, well, this is clearly a landmark move made by Howard Franklin. Like, I wonder just who said that. Like, who would say, like, well, this is directed by two people, so it's tonally divisive. Like, that's not something that jumped out at me either. So that's a very puzzling thing to say about it, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, again, just even in Bill Murray fashion, drama and comedy, the way they play and the kind of jarringness between them, it seems like people would have got that by now from him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't understand why this one didn't click with people the same way any of his other movies do. Like Ian said, this movie's a lot better than Scrooged is, and Scrooged was a hit.
Yeah, I mean, and I still like Scrooge, but this is just... I laugh at Scrooge still. I get some kicks out of it here and there, like, staple the antlers to its head. Like, that's still funny, but I straight cracked up laughing at the damn bicycle jousting. It was like Jackass before Jackass. Oh my god, that was amazing.
And just how earnestly all of them play that. Like, when the guy falls off the bike, and then the bike, like, lands in the Padre's hands, and he just, like, shoves it down to the ground in disgust. And, like, they're playing it so straight. And it's like, they had to be laughing their butts off, like, when they were reading the script. Like, oh, wait, we're doing this scene? Like, really? But, like, it is so, like, it looks like it's like a modern-day Western in 2.5 minutes or whatever. It's so great.
Yeah. And, it's weird. It's one of those things where I feel like sometimes comedy writers will get some idea that's just naturally funny. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to show two guys jousting on bicycles in a movie. Like, that's going to get people laughing their asses off. And then, like, they just have to find a way to fit it in. And just with the tone of this movie and, like, all the weirdness and problems that these guys keep encountering, that scene in any other movie really shouldn't work because our characters literally stop to watch something happen. And so we have to contrive a reason for them to stop and watch this happen. But it fits so naturally given the situation that they're in that this really awkward, like, additional idea that the movie is not structured around. Like, I feel like the writer, Bill Murray or whoever wrote the scene, woke up in the middle of the night one night and wrote, dudes jousting on bicycles, put it in somewhere, and then went back to sleep, and then, like, worked on a bunch of stuff and finally found this and decided to put it in. As opposed to the way, that writing is, quote-unquote, supposed to work, wherein you go, okay, now I need our characters to stop, but I need to subvert what they want. So they're going to stop to ask the guy for directions, and why can't he give them directions? Now what's a funny thing? Oh, maybe he's going to joust on... But, like, it doesn't feel like it was a natural progression. It feels like an odd little thing that they decided to put in, and it just works. And so I really appreciate that, because so often moves like that really don't work, and I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head from a comedy movie where it's clearly just an idea that they had floating around, and putting it in the film itself didn't quite work, but it's still a funny scene.
I can think of one, and you may disagree. I think you and I had talked about Spaceballs. I think the scene where the xenomorph comes out of John Hurt, and then it starts doing the Michigan J Frog dance. I think that scene, you could remove it from the movie and it wouldn't change the plot. Like, it's just a scene where they said, hey, this would be really funny, and they put it in there. And it didn't work for me, but Spaceballs for me was a lot of like funny jokes that they just strung together, but as a whole, I didn't like it as much as a lot of people do. So that was an example of what you were just saying for me, but I'm sure like everyone else likes Spaceballs more than I do, so I'm sure there are people who would disagree with me and say that the Michigan J Frog scene is just fine in that movie.
No, I think that's a good example, because yeah, it is just like a quick funny gag where the whole movie, it doesn't progress anything. The whole movie stops for that gag. And it's the same here, but it's just better interwoven in the situation, and it adds to their just, God damn it, can anything go right now? So I appreciate it for that. Okay, guys. Little more time to fill. What can we talk about? Steve, take us somewhere.
So
it's hard.
It is. I mean, there isn't a ton to say about this movie. I just kind of like enjoyed the experience of watching it the whole time. I will say I was surprised by how short it was. I feel like a lot happens. Everything happens very naturally, and the arcs are all interconnected. But the movie's barely an hour and a half long. I don't even think it is an hour and a half long.
I think it was an hour and 28 minutes, I think.
Like it's really short. I'm surprised at how quickly they were able to do a lot of this stuff. Especially when you think about the fact that the bank robbery is 20 minutes of this movie. Like it's so weirdly disproportionate.
Yeah, it is surprisingly long, because like you expect it to be a lot shorter or to take up more of the movie, and then it's over, and you're like, oh well, that was quick.
It is a prologue to this movie, and it's like a third of it. Yeah.
That is crazy, though, how well that works, because from the second you see Bill Murray exit the bank in the, like, redhead costume and everything, you're really not expecting, you have no idea where the movie's gonna go. When he's on the phone with the chief of police and stuff, and the horn honks, you don't know where what the next scene of the movie is going to be. Is like, it can go in so many different directions from that point. They could go rob another bank around the country. This could be like their thing. This is how they rob banks in these really extravagant situations and stuff. And you could keep doing that. You could do like a movie where it's like them robbing 3 or 4 banks and getting more frustrated with each other as characters, kind of like a breaking up the band kind of movie. Or you could do this where they can't get out of town, or you could do this cat and mouse game, like really extend you'd have the chief of police like retire from his job and become obsessed with the bank robber that ruined his career and go on like a cat and mouse game across the country trying to chase them down and all this stuff, like Catch Me If You Can. It can go in so many different directions there. It's just a really, really strong opening to the movie, and it really, I feel, pulls you in really well.
It's almost like what you're describing almost sounds like like not a choose your own adventure, but like let's supply like the opening scene to a movie to like 5 different people and then watch them each create 5 completely different movies or whatever. Like, you know, you are going to do like a Silence of the Lambs thing where Bill Murray gets caught and then he has to help catch a worse bank robber or whatever. Like, and then you are going to do like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're right. Like that opening scene, it has almost infinite possibilities to where it could go. And then they chose to make it more or less just a chase scene. Like the whole movie is just one long chase scene where, you know, everything goes wrong. And I like it. But hearing you say all that does make me think like, wow, there are so many other things they could have done. And I'd be interested in all of those things too, especially with this cast.
I'm trying to remember. I think there was a television series recently that followed a bunch of filmmakers, and they were each given like the same budget, the same equipment, and I think it was the same premise, or like they all had to have the exact same opening scene, and they just given like a really vague, okay, your opening scene has to be this, and you get to do the rest of the movie from there. And I cannot remember the name of the show or anything, but that was like... I never watched the show, so to be fair, I'm probably butchering the hell out of the premise, but that was always an interesting idea for a show, I think. Just follow filmmakers going on completely different directions like that.
I don't know if I had heard about it being a show, but I had heard of something like that, where it's like two different film directors each got the same script and made like completely different films. But I don't know, and it's been a while since I've heard of that, and I didn't watch the film, so I may be butchering it also, but I've heard of something kind of similar to that.
We are sure that there's a vague thing where with multiple directors. That's the part we're sure on.
Yeah.
So you can take whatever premise we give you and run off and go find your own thing.
Yep. Oh wow! I thought I had something like that really profound I was going to say, and then I just drew a blank.
Okay, well, like this makes me think of some. So since this is kind of like a hidden gem film that's kind of been forgotten about, can you guys think of other movies that are kind of in that same genre of like, man, this is actually a really good film from this really well-known, director or actor or whatever. Why don't people talk about it more? Because what this made me think of, and it came out around the same time, I want to say like maybe 88, 89, is a Mel Brooks film that I've literally never heard anyone talk about, and it's Life Stinks.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
I have no idea what that is, yeah.
That's a really interesting one where like Mel Brooks plays a millionaire who takes a bet to live in poverty for like, it's supposed to be a week or something. And then things, it just progressively gets worse for him to ridiculous degrees. Like, there's one scene where he's trying to find a place to sleep, and he finally finds, a raised platform in front of a door that he can sleep on a piece of cardboard. And he's just, he just lays down, and it takes him a minute to get comfy, and then he finally lays down, and you can tell he's just about to go to sleep. And then someone just opens the door and it completely pushes him off the platform onto the ground just to throw away something that, lands right on him. And so it's just, every conceivable thing for him goes wrong. And so it's really a similar kind of tone and stuff in a lot of ways. It's pretty dark. It's a bit on the depressing side, but it's in a funny way, if that makes any sense. How about you, Steve? Any other hidden gem kind of movies you think people should be aware of?
Trying to think. Well, okay. Has anyone here watched In Your Eyes?
No.
Okay, In Your Eyes is a Joss Whedon movie that came out back in 2014, I think. He did a Kickstarter to get the movie going. He wrote it and he produced it, and it's kind of a freaky premise, but it's basically about two people who live on opposite sides of the country that have a weird, psychic connection, and it's like a sort of supernatural romance story. Huh. I don't think anyone in that movie is even... Either they've had very small cameos or they weren't in anything Whedon related at all. So it's one of the only things he's done that isn't that doesn't have a history with his regular cast. Right. And it's on Netflix, and it seems like no one's watched it. It took me 3 years to watch it. But it's really, really good. It's really cute. It's just an adorable, interesting, romantic comedy and exceptionally unique in a way that Whedon hadn't been doing in a while. It's like, what if The Shining was cute?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
really good though. I really
that seems like with both of you guys, and the one I'm thinking of too. It's it's not something where it's the director is somebody nobody's heard of, the actors you've never heard of. Like Mel Brooks and Joss Whedon, they have huge fan bases, and you would think that people would people who like Spaceballs and Young Frankenstein and Men in Tights, that they would also like what was it, Life Stinks, or
yep.
That people would be talking about it, or people are I'm a pretty big fan of Buffy and Angel and Firefly and Dollhouse, so you would think I would have heard of this, and it's a recent thing too. I never even I would have thought that people on Twitter would be saying Buffy creator Joss Whedon has just started a Kickstarter today, and it's the most adorable thing you've ever seen. Clickbait title. You'd think they would have done something like that. I never heard of that. The movie I'm thinking of is from around the same time that Quick Change came out. It's called The Burbs. It has Tom Hanks and Carrie Fisher are the two, I guess, the two main characters. And then Bruce Dern is in it. Corey Feldman is in it. Have either of you heard of it or watched it?
No.
Okay, it is my favorite movie of all time, and I don't want to say too much about it because I'm probably going to pick it in a few weeks or whatever. Whenever the next time it's my turn to pick something to review, but it's also a comedy, but it's got Tom Hanks and Carrie Fisher, and you would think that like this would be bigger because of that. Like Tom Hanks now, I heard someone somewhat recently say that he is probably like one of the best actors alive today, and I don't know if I agree with that. I'm not going to argue that premise because I don't know who I would pick to be the best actor today. But, like, I mean, he's very diverse. Like, I can think of several things he's done where it's like, that's extremely different than this other thing he's done. But, like, this is a movie, every time I try to explain it to someone and I try to say, like, you will understand me and my sense of humor so much more if you watch this movie. Like, I'll try to explain it to someone without, like, ruining the premise of it. And then I'll start to explain it. This has happened to me twice where I would be explaining it to someone and they thought that I was talking about the movie Money Pit. That had Tom Hanks and the girl from Cheers. I can't Shelley somebody. It's not Duvall.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's the woman from Cheers, Diane. But anyway, like I've had that happen twice where I'd be explaining the movie and someone would I could tell they're kind of just like, I wish he'd shut up. And then they're like, wait, you're not talking about Money Pit. And I'm like, no, I've never seen Money Pit. And so like, that's happened to me where like I'm like an evangelist trying to spread the word about this movie, and everyone is either like, okay, you can shut up now, or they think I'm talking about something else.
That's funny. You just remind me of this Onion article I saw the other day. It was like, Tom Hanks says he will not retire until he has played every single American.
He is Mr. Rogers though, so.
Oh wait, he's played Mr. Rogers?
He's playing Mr. Rogers in the biopic with the nicest name ever. It's called You're My Friend.
Aw.
Right?
Yeah, let's hear. Like, he did Sully, he did Captain Phillips, he did Walt Disney, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
He did... Man, Tom Hanks has played everybody. It's crazy.
Look at me. Look at me. I'm the neighbor now. I do want to see that movie. Like I was like on the tail end of the Mr. Rogers year. Like I mean, I was born in '89, so like I was either watching reruns or the show was still going on when I was a kid. But I caught episodes when I was a kid, so I'm very curious to see how he'll play that. And I
want to make an Adventures movie, but instead of like Captain America and Iron Man, I'm gonna get Mr. Rogers, Bob Ross, and Geordie LaForge.
Oh, that'd be great.
It's going to be called The Really Nice Mid-Afternoon.
I'd watch it.
Bob Ross is going to paint something. Geordie LaForge is going to sit there and read a book to you.
That could actually be dangerous to watch because it would just put you in such a calm where it's like your heart is slowing down because you're like you need a little bit of stress in your life just to get your heart rate up a little bit.
And then you can watch this movie and the end of the scene with the plane make you go, oh my god!
And now you need a little bit of Reading Rainbow to calm you down.
Yeah. Earlier you talked about like if they made this more suspenseful, and I was trying to think of other like really good heist movies because I think this is like a really good heist and getaway movie. So I'd kind of put it up there with Inside Man and Catch Me If You Can. You guys got any other good heist movie recommendations then? Since we're just kind of going for random things. The Town?
The Town.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that. I still need to.
Yeah, that's really, really good. I really like that movie. Ben Affleck is one of those weird directors where I feel like every movie he's made has subsequently gotten worse, but that doesn't mean any of them are bad. They just have gotten worse for some reason. So...
Interesting.
His best movie I think he's ever written and directed is Gone Girl, it's Gone Baby Gone, which is the first one he did. They did The Town after that, which I love The Town, but it's not as good as Gone Baby Gone. They did Argo, which is not as good as The Town or Gone Baby Gone, but it's still really good.
I like
then
Argo.
he did Live by Night, which is actually pretty terrible, but still. And that's not his fault. That was Justice League's fault.
Okay.
Oh, I was thinking of Argo before you said your answer, Steve, because I was thinking like it's not a heist actually, but they have to get into the country and then they have to get these people out of the country. So in a lot of the ways, it's hitting some of the same beats that a heist movie hits. Like, they're planning it. Like, he gets with Alan Arkin and like and John Goodman, they're making the plan. And then like he has to get in and get them out without anyone, dying. And like, it's got a moment in that movie where they're in customs and they're like, it's a lot like this movie. You would expect it in this movie where like just seconds and they would have been caught. Spoilers, sorry. But like,
we've already reviewed Argo. Don't you realize that everybody that watches Geeky Gentlemen have seen every single movie we've talked about, read every comic we've talked about, and watched every single episode of Geeky Gentlemen? God.
Excellent. Hey, good. I don't have to cover myself with spoilers then. I'm happy. I always feel like whenever I always try to like just go into something just in general, I'm going to spoil stuff. And then if the one time I forget, someone will say, hey, spoilers, Jack Horn. But anyway, I feel like Argo, while it's not technically a heist, I would put it up there because I feel like it's just similar enough to a heist that it counts. I don't know if you guys would say that.
No, that's fair.
But
again,
Baby Driver, does that count?
I've not seen Baby Driver. I need to.
I mean, I think it is. It's about a person that does bank heists, so I think that probably counts. And then Reservoir Dogs also counts, even though you never see the heist.
Did I ever tell you about the Reservoir Dogs PS2 game?
What?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it sounds like exactly what Steve reacted with. What? But like, it's the greatest thing ever because you play the heist,
which doesn't exist.
See, I was gonna say like when you first said that, my immediate thought was, oh, so it's just cutscenes, right? Like there's no actual
Right.
There's no actual gameplay.
No, you play the heist. Like they redo some of the scenes. I'm pretty sure they use the original voice actors or the original like dialogue from the movie and just animate the scenes with the in-game CG. And then they like you actively play through the heist that they pull, and it all goes wrong.
You should get somebody who's never seen Reservoir Dogs and have them play. Who's the guy who's in the back and has been shot? Is it the guy played
Mr.
by
Orange?
Yeah, get somebody who's never played the game. Like, all right, you play Mr. Orange, I'll play Tim Roth's character, whatever. And then it's like they get shot in the first minutes of the game. You're like, haha, you lose. Sorry, I'd be a jerk.
Fair enough. No, it's just an interesting little side note.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that. Wow.
Yeah. I remember my friend David played it, and he's like, "Oh man, this game's really funny." Like they're all talking about their code names. The guy's like, "Why do I gotta be Mr. Pink?" And they go, "'Cause you're a fucking faggot."
Oh no!
Damn.
Was that game also written by Grant Morrison, or is that the one time?
I think that was just a one-time thing.
Aw.
Oh, that's so funny.
That would have actually blown my mind.
Yeah. Oh well,
So,
I think we're good on this one. Let's go ahead and go on to ratings, if that's okay.
Hey, did you know that the guy who is assistant to Rosslinger, every time he shows up, I kept thinking like it's Hugh Grant, but it's not. But I was like the whole time I was like, that guy looks so much like Hugh Grant.
He really does, doesn't he? Now that you say that.
And what stinks is like he could probably have made a career of being like the lesser Hugh Grant. Like he could be in like a just
Diet
okay.
Hugh Grant.
Yeah, some rom-com where it's like otherwise it's really terrible, but we've got this guy who kind of looks like Hugh Grant, and he makes it palatable.
I'm pretty sure that guy has probably made a career on Hallmark movie if that's the case.
Yeah, that'd be where he would need to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we good to go on to ratings then?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna give this movie. Honestly, I don't really have any complaints. I think it's a damn near perfect movie. I don't have anything I can talk about, so I'm gonna go for a 5 out of 5 cars that get just fucking trashed by the fire department.
I love that scene.
It's just busting the fucking window.
Oh. who's next? Are you next, Steve?
Sure. I'm gonna give it. Yeah, I don't think I really have any problems with it either. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it 5 out of 5 incorrect monster trucks for some reason.
What was it? Tilting hydraulic body?
Something like that.
I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5. Flores para los muertos, or however. He said it differently.
For the dead.
He said something mortos, and then she was saying muertos, I think. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Steve, what are we going to be talking about next week?
All right, the topic discussion for next week is going to be
stalling to find topics.
Yes. We'll have a topic about what it means to stall to find the topic. No, I've been thinking about video games a lot lately, just because I've been playing that Dragon Ball Z game, and it's intense and it's awesome, but it's also like more of a hardcore video game than I thought. So maybe we can talk about contemporary video games and how the medium has evolved.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about contemporary video game or something like that. The contemporary video game industry.
Yeah, contemporary video game industry, or maybe just simplify it to contemporary gaming, because industry I don't care as much as like when we were talking earlier, how you really can't have a Crash Bandicoot, Jack and Dexter, Sly Cooper series anymore, kind of thing.
No, I gotcha. That'll be fine. All right, cool.
So what would we classify as like contemporary? Like at what date would we say it begins here? Like 2000 to now, or like even sooner?
No, I'd say this generation of systems. So
yeah,
Xbox
PS4 onward.
Yeah, PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch. I'd throw the Wii U in there too, just because that's kind of like in the same generation of consoles. Yeah. So anything that's come out in those years, and that can include any PC games between that period and now. So plenty of stuff to talk about there. All right, cool. Everyone, thanks very much for watching, for sticking with us as we just went on random tangents to try to fill time. I hope you all enjoyed that in our review of this movie. And until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Exile.
And I'm the Comics Kid 2099.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.